Hi, everybody. Welcome to Katie in the Morning and welcome to Monday. Today, we are taking on a very big subject, and that is barriers in communication. Almost every year, most facilities do what's called an employee satisfaction poll. 73% of CNA said the one thing that they would improve if they could is communication within the building and communication between their peers. So today I am bringing you some tips on how to improve that communication. We're going to break down some of the barriers that are associated with that and explain how you can come about it to make the communication flow a little bit better within your own facility. So when it comes to communication barriers, the first one slide that I put up is what clouds the message, what gets in the way of that clear communication between me to Nancy to Rita to John back to Joe and then back to me. I'm sure you guys have all played that game telephone, where you start with a message, whisper it into one person's ear, and it goes all the way around the room. Then you find out how much it's changed when it gets back to that last person is told to you again. That's actually a very good kind of example about how barriers can affect the original message to the receiver of the message. So the first barrier when it comes to communication is physical barriers. This can be yelling across the room, background noise, speaking too softly. This is what physically keeps the person from hearing the message that you're trying to get them. It could also be like another physical. I would like to combine physical with electronical barriers, because a lot of the communication in facilities now is done through documentation, and I don't think that this information was updated, with like the today, the now, the technology. But another way that that it can be physically stopped is, your computer crashes, or the autocorrect is a horrible one, especially when it comes to like text messaging and stuff. You can turn out with a completely different sentence than what you had originally intended to send, and that person's like, what? Or you can send it to the wrong person. So those are just some examples of physical barriers. So when it comes to preventing that from happening, make sure when you're communicating to someone that you're speaking in like a monotone, low, clear voice, so that they understand everything that is coming out of your mouth. Pronunciate your words so that there's no miscommunication about what you are actually saying to them and what they're actually hearing. And then try to cut out as much background noise as you possibly can. Multiple conversations are a big one when it comes to this. If you're standing at the nurse's station, you're trying to get a report from the CNA that you're following, and there's 16 other conversations going on at that desk, you're probably going to hear 25% of what that person's trying to tell you. So when it comes to report specifically, remove yourself from that situation. Walk down the hall, stand in front of the door so you know which person they're talking about. And but if you're in the hallway, make sure that it's a private conversation that nobody can hear you around, especially in accordance to HIPAA. The second barrier when it comes to communication is perceptional barriers, seeing the world differently, different personalities, different conflicts, different backgrounds, filtering the message, and selective hearing. I love to tell my husband that he has selective hearing, because he hears what he wants when he wants. Not really. He's actually a very good listener, but that's just my excuse for things not getting done around the house. But those are some things that you need to work on, especially feedback is a very, very important part of this barrier. Not only relaying that message to them, but asking them questions to make sure they're understanding what you're telling them. This one's pretty self-explanatory. There's a lot of confusion when it comes to messages being sent, especially like people with different personalities, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. How you perceive that message can be very, very different. The next barrier that I had on the slide for today is the emotional barriers. Holding back thoughts and feelings. This is another huge one with feedback. If you're telling somebody something and they're nonchalantly or okay or yeah or nodding their head, they're probably not listening to what you're telling them, or that message that you're trying to get across to them. So eye contact is a big one. Feedback is a big one when it comes to this, and really just observing how this person's stance is, what kind of a persona are they giving off to you, what kind of state of mind are they in, and how are their emotions sitting. Some people are very, very good at hiding emotions and concealing them. Some people are not. So if they are in like a panic state, if something like in emergency situations, messaging is very, very, very important, that communication between people. So if you're trying to tell somebody something and something has just happened that set them off, wait for them to calm down, give them a few breaths, let them relax, and then communicate to them. Don't try to do it right away after it happens, or if you can physically see them in an emotional state. Let them know, I'm trying to tell you something. This is going to help you. I need you to take a few deep breaths, calm down, and then we're going to talk about it. Let them know ahead of time, really get them into a state of mind where they are willing to take in that information that you're telling them and receive that message in a positive way or in an urgent way when it comes to emergency situations. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the barriers in communication.
From the Heart, a weekly segment with John Willard, airs every Tuesday at 2:30 Central Time on CNA TV.
I promise you, in a NACA facility, residents get better care because they're being cared for by a higher educated, and I'm not talking college, I'm talking a person that has industry education. This makes them the best at the bedside, and we've proven it time and time again.
NACA takes care of our CNAs, the most important force within any long-term care community.
What a pleasure it has been and will continue to be to have the partnership that we have in Arizona, and I would really encourage other states to do the same.
Any facility out there that may be watching this that would like to go through the NACA process of transformation, you get a hold of NACA and we'll be there to serve with excellence every day, all day, anytime you need us.
For more information, visit us online at nacacna.org or call 417-623-6049.
Welcome back to Katie in the Morning. Today we are talking about barriers in communication. The next one is kind of a big one, especially for me. I'm not really culturally diverse in my knowledge, and that's something that I don't always think about when I'm talking to people. I'm an extrovert, so I kind of spout off right away, really kind of get in your face kind of person, not in a bad way, but I just want to be everybody's friend. But culture barriers are a huge part of misconstruing messages. Group behaviors are something you should think about, traditions and customs, whether it is a religious culture, whether it is an ethnicity culture, or any other kind of culture you can think of. One of the specific examples I can tell you is back in my late teens, early 20s when I was working as a CNA. Like I told you guys previously this week, I worked in Minnesota for a temp agency, and there was a place I was working in Worthington, Minnesota, and there was a tiny little lady, going around, and she had almost like a full beard, and I couldn't understand why nobody had helped her shave. I couldn't understand, and it was her religion that women weren't allowed to modify their bodies in any shape or form. So that was really an eye-opening experience for me, coming from small town Iowa, where everybody knows everybody by their first name, and the person that you're taking care of was your grandma's best friend or somebody who used to babysit you or your kindergarten teacher. Seeing like the diverse cultures and the different traditions that come with that, as I kind of spread my wings and flew throughout the Northwest Iowa region, it was really an eye-opening experience. So if there's something going on, or you're trying to connect with somebody, ask them if there's a blockage there of the message that you're trying to send, or a message that they're trying to send you. Ask them about their cultural background. Is there something that you should know that would help get that message across in a clear way? The next one is a very, very, very huge one, and that is language barriers. We're seeing it more and more throughout the United States. Not everyone is familiar with different languages and communication do's and don'ts. This goes back to what I just said. Small town Iowa, you called everybody by their first name. In some cultures, in some different languages, it is completely and totally disrespectful to call somebody older than you by their first name. It's either Mrs. or Mr. or Doctor or Miss, or just that title, so to speak, needs to be put before their name. I know in some, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, like Asian cultures, it's disrespectful for a woman to look a man right in the eyes when they meet them for the first time. It's kind of considered a challenge. So really knowing your research on these people and these residents in general will help you to better communicate with them, learning their culture, learning language specifically is a very hard one, because if you're in a prominently English speaking facility and you don't speak any other languages, and that person comes in, they're trying to tell you their wants and needs, it's going to be very hard to differentiate the things that they want, the things that they need, and the things that they're trying to communicate with you. my mom always says this old saying, just because I can't read the sign that says toilet doesn't mean I don't know how to use it. So that's where some of the signage comes in, give them a picture of some food, toilet, water, paint, the sad face, so that when they're trying to communicate with you and you don't have any idea what they're saying, they can still communicate with you to their needs and their wants through pictures, pointing to what they want, or numbers is a huge one too. Just to use that as some form of communication other than language to get that message across to them. And the last one that I wanted to talk to you guys about today was the inappropriate communication channels, using the appropriate type of communication for different situations. Like we just talked about earlier, texting is a horrible way, in my opinion, to communicate things that are very, very important. You cannot tell what kind of emotional state that person is behind that phone. You don't know if they're trying to be sarcastic, if they're trying to be sincere, if they're trying to be funny, if they're trying to be uplifting, if they're trying to stop you right in your tracks to knock you down. You don't know just by those words that are coming across the screen. Documentation is another part that comes very, very big into play in this. When you're writing out, like, traditionally you would see nurses do this, but you see med aides do it in their notes when it comes to like adverse reactions, or any notes when it comes to how the person took their pills. If there's somebody that needs to be monitored for a behavioral issue, make sure that you're putting into layman terms what you're trying to communicate. Don't try to over elaborate that in any means. If you're doing a shift report sheet, I know some facilities still do. They'll list the resident by name and then write out anything that you want the next shift to know right next to their name. Like I said, don't try to overdo it. Just put the facts and nothing but the facts on there, and you'll save yourself and the resident and your coworkers a whole lot of trouble. I thank you guys all for joining me today, and I will see you right back here for Katie in the Morning.